Hello, I'm Dave Moore here with PITC, and today we're going to go over the testing procedure for an RPBA. The backflow preventer that we're going to be testing today is a Watts LF009. The first thing we're going to do before we start our test is we're going to flush the test cocks to clear them of any dirt or debris. Once I've flushed my test cocks, I'm going to take my high hose and connect it to test cock number 2. The first test that we're going to test on our RP is testing our check 1 in forward pressure, or our pressure differential across check 1. The minimum spring tension that we can have across check 1 is 5 psi on our RP, and so our gauge must hold above 5 for 2 minutes. We're first going to pressurize and bleed our gauge. Once I've bled my gauge, I'm going to isolate my device, and then I'm going to open up test cock number 3. Once I've opened up test cock number 3, I'm going to observe my pressure. My pressure is sitting at around 9.8, 10 psi. That's well above my minimum of 5 pounds, so we would record that as a pass. The second test that we're going to do on our RP is we're going to see when our relief valve opening point is. Our relief valve must open before 2 psi, and we test this by slowly opening the needle valve on our low side. And observe when we open our relief opens. So our relief opened around 4 psi, which is again above our 2 psi minimum. And so we would record that as a pass. We're going to subtract our 10 psi from our 4 psi, which is going to give us our buffer. We have a buffer of around 6 psi on this device, which again is well above a pass. We're now going to move on to the next part of the test. So we're going to close our test cocks. I'm going to move our high hose from test cock 2 to test cock 3. I'm going to re-establish pressure within our device. We're going to pressurize and bleed our gauge. Once we've bled our gauge, we are going to close isolation valve 1. And the next test that we do on our RP is checking our check 2 and forward, or our pressure differential across check 2. We have a minimum spring tension of 1 psi on check 2 in an RP, so again we must hold above 1 psi for 2 minutes. To do this test, we're going to open up test cock number 4 and observe our pressure differential. We have a pressure differential of around 2 psi. Again, if it holds above 1 psi and constant pressure, we record that as a pass. So now we're going to close our test cocks and move on to the next part of the test. The last part of the test in testing an RP is testing our check 2 and reverse pressure. We do this by taking our high hose and connecting it to test cock number 4. We'll re-establish pressure within our device. Again, we're going to pressurize and bleed our gauge. Once our gauge is bled, we're going to shut our isolation valve 1 off and open up test cock number 3. And then we're going to open up our needle valve slowly and just reduce our pressure to a readable level. Again, we must hold a constant pressure for 2 minutes on this test, proving that our check 2 is holding on back pressure. Once we've waited for our 2 minutes, we observe this is passed. We close our test cocks and we return the device back to service.